I have some visual aids here this Shabbat. I imagine most of you will recognize these two items, a trowel and a brick. Now, I want to assure you that I haven't taken leave of my senses, and I'm not suggesting that we start today to build a new addition for the temple in there to meet. I really do have a purpose in showing these, and I promise that I will get back to these items in a few moments and even relate them and what follows to this week's Torah portion, Metzorah. But first, let's begin with some very important beginnings. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashemayim v'et haaretz v'haaretz hayata tova bo. I believe that all of you know that beginning. In English or in Hebrew, that is the beginning of the 5 books of Moses, the beginning of the Torah. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. So let's go to another one. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, well, that's another beginning. The beginning of the Declaration of Independence, the very beginning of our great nation. All right, let's try an excerpt from another beginning. On November 29th, 1947, the General Assembly of the United Nations adopted a resolution for the establishment of an independent Jewish state in Palestine. I will skip a little here. It is moreover the self-evident right of the Jewish people to be a nation as all other nations in its own sovereign state. Accordingly, we, and I skip again, hereby proclaim the establishment of the Jewish state in Palestine to be called Israel. Of course, that beginning was on May 14th, 1948. It was taken from the Declaration of Israel's independence and was read to the world by David Ben-Gurion. All right, just one more. Today, it seems to me providential that fate should have chosen Rano on the Inn as my birthplace. For this little town lies on the boundary between 2 German states, which we of the younger generation, at least, have made it our life work to reunite by every means at our disposal. Do you recognize that beginning? Those are the opening words of Mein Kampf. Obviously, not a beginning we like to think of. In the past, when I have had the privilege of speaking to the congregation and to the minyan, I've sometimes started by asking everyone to think about a question and have them answer it to themselves. So let me ask you to ask yourself, what will I say? We'll get to your own answers later on. So what do all these beginnings have in common? All the beginnings I've read to you are words. Someone said something and there was a beginning. Obviously, the most powerful of these was Bereshit, Genesis. In the 33rd Psalm, it was said, by the word of the Lord were the heavens made. In fact, one of the names for God, one of the names for Hashem in later Jewish literature translates as he who spake and the world came into existence. Pretty powerful stuff, these things called words. A world is created by them. Great nations are born of them, and whole peoples are destroyed by them. So what does any of this have to do with our Torah portion? And what does any of it have to do with my asking each of you to ask yourself, what will I say? Well, let's take a look. Our portion this morning normally has 2 sections. The first, found in Leviticus 12:1, Vayikra, is Tazriah, in which Hashem instructs Moses about purification rituals. However, this year is a leap year in our calendar, so this and the next portion, the second, are read separately, and this week, for our purposes, the more relevant section is Metzorah. Here, upon first glance, Hashem describes to Moses and Aaron the procedures for identifying, treating, and responding to those infected with tsarat, which has been described by many Christian scholars since the King James English version of the Bible as leprosy. At first glance, Metzorah seems to be a tractate defining how we discover and respond to that specific disease. And all of the descriptions are pretty graphic stuff. But as we are all aware, first glance is never enough for our sages. In fact, this is one of the most difficult sections of the Torah to understand. For an explanation, I turn to the words of Rabbi Shraga Simmons of Aish.com. Rabbi Shraga first tells an old rabbinic tale. One man spread a rumor about another. He later felt regret and went to the rabbi to ask how to make amends. "Go to the store and buy a bag of feathers," said the rabbi. "Then go to a big open field and scatter the feathers into the wind. Do so, and report back to me in a week." The man did as he was told and came back the next week to find out what to do. "Now," said the rabbi, "go back to the field and pick up all the feathers." "But," protested the man, "those feathers, they've scattered far and wide. I'll never be able to find them all. Many have already flown to other towns." "Exactly," explained the rabbi. "Now you understand. When we speak badly about another person, the effect is far and wide, and it is damage that can never be fully undone. You can't take back what has been said by using Control Z on your mouth's keyboard. In truth, the rabbis tell us that tsarat is a physical manifestation of a spiritual deficiency. The Talmud in Arachin 16 says that tsarat comes specifically as a consequence of lashon hora, which literally translates as bad tongue. In other words, negative speech about another person. We even see in Numbers in Bamidbar, chapter 12, that when Moses' sister Miriam spoke lashon hora, she contracted tsarat. So what is the connection between speaking badly, in other words, gossiping about another person, and contracting this skin disease? Well, let's look. Speech is the tool of creation. Through it, we can build up individuals and the world, or on the other hand, speech can also be used to destroy. We can praise and encourage. This is life-giving and life-affirming. However, using words such as "you're worthless" can wipe out a person's self-esteem in a moment. As King Solomon said in Proverbs, life and death are in the power of the tongue. The Talmud explains that negative speech is even worse than a sword, since it kills many people even at a great distance. Remember the expression, "sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me"? Clearly, it was not said by a Jew. Beyond individual destruction, we have all seen the power of gossip, a vicious rumor to tear apart relationships, families, and even entire communities. Of course, just as the Torah prohibits us from speaking lashon hara, as we're prohibited from speaking it, we are also prohibited from even listening to it, which makes sense. If I won't listen, you can't speak it. By listening to negative talk, we fuel the viciousness and become desensitized to its effect on others. I won't go into what the Torah says is the punishment for someone having tsarat. Suffice it to say that the punishment is measure for measure. If you promote divisiveness amongst others, then you will also suffer the divisiveness of separation from community. And don't make the mistake of thinking that the Torah prohibition is limited only to speaking falsities and untruths. Lying falls under a separate prohibition expressed in Exodus and Shemot 20:13 through 23:7. Lashon hora is the prohibition against saying anything negative or derogatory about another person, even when it's true. Often Lashon hora will couch itself in a cloak of rationalizations, but it doesn't even matter whether the words are spoken explicitly or merely implied. If the message can be construed negatively, then it is a violation of Lashon hora. In the song Trouble from the show The Music Man, Professor Harold Hill admonishes the parents to look for the telltale signs of corruption. Perhaps we need to listen for our own voices, our own telltale signs in the following. Rabbi Simmons suggests that there are some commonly spoken statements of Lashon hora to watch out for. Statements such as, but it's true, or, but I didn't even mention his name, or I wouldn't care if someone said the same thing about me, or perhaps everyone knows about it already anyway, or I'd even say it to his face, or I'm just kidding, or even saying nothing but rolling your eyes, or it's all in the name of business competition, or this may be Lashon hora, but, or even, come on, you can tell me. All of these and more qualify as Lashon hora. Pretty simple, really. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, is the rabbinic statement. Speaking well of an individual could introduce them to their spouse, recommend them to a new professional position, and even allow them to enter a new social sphere. On the other hand, speaking poorly of a person can ruin their professional opportunity, hurt their social standing, and damage their relationships with family and friends. Words can create the world. They can also destroy it. Hashem created the universe through the word. So too, through our human use of language, we can either create or destroy the world. Words can hurt or they can heal. Every year we commemorate Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day. We know that the Holocaust did not begin with the extermination camps. It began with words. It began with the hatred taught about Judaism in the New Testament and the writings of the Church Fathers. It began with the legal documents of the Middle Ages that define the status of the Jew. The spirit of the Holocaust found further expression in the writings of Martin Luther, who said that the Jews should be burned alive in their synagogues. The words of modern anti-Semitism created the portrait of the Jews as a subhuman race. Only the very final words that gave rise to the Holocaust were expressed in Hitler's Mein Kampf. No wonder our rabbis teach death and life is in the power of the tongue. Rabbi Zev Leff sums this all up very well. He writes, the Jerusalem Talmud says that there are 3 sins for which a person is punished in this world and in the next: immorality, murder, and idolatry. And Lashon hora is equal to all 3. These 3 sins represent the destruction of one's physical, emotional, and spiritual self, and Lashon hora equals them all. For the totality of the human being is destroyed by the corruption of his ultimate distinction, his speech. So I come back now to the beginning, to my first words in this presentation. Why did I show you a trowel and a brick? Because our words are our tools, and like a trowel, they can be used to build up or to tear down. So stop and think before you use the tools that Hashem has given you, and ask yourself, as I entreated earlier, what will I say? Shabbat Shalom.